So I'm here in central Wisconsin, the Central Wisconsin Naturalist, and I'm starting to develop an idea in my mind about making a series of videos for YouTube that will provide people the opportunity to come along with me as I go on adventures semi-regularly in the Mead Wildlife Area, 35,000 acre wildlife area, central Wisconsin. And a little bit about me. I'm a high school biology teacher, so I consider myself a biologist and an amateur naturalist, and really have a desire to share nature with people. Maybe provide an opportunity for people that are not able to come out into a place like I have here and experience it. So I just want to show you the area that we are in. My goal for these videos is just bring you along and see the things that I'm seeing, and as I'm finding things, I would hope that I am going to be able to interpret what I'm seeing and provide some insights about the natural order of things, not only in Wisconsin but throughout the upper Midwest, Great Lakes states, and hopefully people can learn something, enjoy the trips, and we'll see what happens with this. If it catches on and people start to follow what I do, all the better. Each one of these little rambles that I go on are really an adventure, and every time I go I end up seeing something new. I should mention that today is February 3rd in Wisconsin, and my thermometer in the vehicle read 43 on the way here. We had a pretty good snowstorm a week ago, got about 8 inches. It's well on the way to disappearing today, as you can see with the fog and the sort of damp conditions. This past week we had really cold weather. We had actually wind chill warnings, and we were down minus 30 with wind chills down to 50 below zero. So the swamps, the water should still be frozen up, which will give us a good opportunity to get into the area where we're going. But this is not characteristic of Wisconsin, and as you can see, the warm air above is keeping the fog sort of confined to the ground in sort of an eerie, really interesting looking dynamic. So the area we're going into today is a block of woods that has been logged recently. Normally where I'm standing in this road, there's a gate, so it's by foot access only, but since the gate is open, I'm going to take the rig in and we'll drive a little ways in before I take off. I'm going to go out into an area that borders a state natural area in Wisconsin. It's called the Conifer Bog State Natural Area, I believe. And it's a large area of northern bog tamarack swamp, black spruce swamp, bog type habitat. And we'll get out into it and take a look at it. So we're in the Jeep heading in. So unfortunately at this point in this endeavor of videoing, all I have is my cell phone. Looking at getting a camera that will be a lot better for some of this outdoor filming. But for now this will have to do. Apologize for the bumpiness. I just wanted you to get an idea of the road in here. So the road we're on is called Mead Lane. Previous to this fall, these woods were not as thinned as they are now. They came in here, well, they've been working in here. Looks like they're still cutting in here actually, because these piles are larger than they were the last time I was here. But they did some thinning, and then in another spot just ahead they did a pretty significant clear cut. Otherwise it's a mix of oak, maple, basswood, some mature aspen, big tooth aspen, quaking aspen. We've had sort of a crazy winter here this winter. The snow we have now is as much as we've had all winter, and we're losing it again. Prior to February here, I was able to, and I'm still able to get around in just my hiking boots. I have put the gaiters on now so that my legs don't get wet, but have not really needed snowshoes this winter, so it's kind of an odd winter. So you saw the rig drove in on the end of this road. Here you can see in the background they kind of plowed it up. We're going to take off down this road behind me and then head east and then a little bit north and get out into that natural area. So just going a little bit here, already we're encountering lots of deer tracks. It's an area that's got a real healthy whitetail population. Good habitat for them. Also have seen numerous squirrel tracks, obviously. And we still have that low-hanging fog in the woods here. It's hard to see distance beyond, but I'm coming up to that area I was mentioning where the clear cut took place. Here's a good squirrel trail going from Big Oak over to other members of the community. That looks like an ash of some sort and so on. So that's kind of the habitat. But anyway, we're coming up to the spot. You can sort of see it through the trees up ahead. That was all big, major basswood. Something that's actually become more common in the Mead over the years that I've been coming out here, and that is wolves. So get down close here and show you the wolf track. There we go. I'll kind of put my hand down for perspective. You can see it's a track that's just about as big as my hand. Lighting's not very good today, but you zoom in, you can see the characteristic nail marks on the toes of the wolves. They've got the four toe marks with the pad. Their fifth toe is up their leg a little bit. This one is coming out of the natural area and heading kind of to the southeast. We may run into their tracks again as we get out into the area, but something just about me, I really like following tracks. I do deer hunt, and out here, not so much out here, but in northern Wisconsin where I go, there's good opportunity for tracking deer during deer season. Here's another, I just came 15-20 feet, and we've got at least, there is a deer track mixed into these tracks here, with the wolf tracks right alongside. There's another nice sized wolf track right there. You can also see the snow around the track, pushed down, you know, so the fur and so on. So anyway, I enjoy following tracks of any sort, and being winter, it's a good time of year to do that. If you look at this patch of woods, this mature woods on an aerial photo, the upland sticks out like a knob into the lowland swamp. So the fringe is tag alder here and getting into kind of cattail marsh a little bit. And then once we break through this fringe, on the other side it opens up into the conifers. So right here you can get an idea of what I was talking about. That patch of woods back there used to be a big mature forest. Over to the opposite tree line you can see far over. But that's the area that they've recently cut. And I don't know, all the way through that woods that I was traveling, I encountered numerous wolf tracks. I don't know if the logging has anything to do with that. Concentrating them a little bit, changing their travel patterns, but I think, you know, this swamp hardwood margin just a great edge for a number of species. The deer and the wolves, obviously. Also regularly find bobcat tracks throughout this area, really the mead in general, but just rich, diverse habitat for a number of the northern species and the southern species. Really in Wisconsin here where I am right now, it's an area called the Curtis Tension Zone, and it's a spot where northern species and habitat types bump up against and transition into southern. So we're starting in Wisconsin the transition between not boreal forest, true boreal forest, but more of a mixed conifer type, and the hardwood, southern hardwood type. And because of that mix, you get a good variety of wildlife, both northern and southern species. For instance, northern and southern flying squirrels. You get some of the more northerly oriented species, wolves and so on. But then you get the southern species as well, coyotes and fox and red fox, gray fox, and so on. So we're coming through this tag alder, kind of the other side of the fringe. You can see it's kind of opening up beyond to the natural area. The tamaracks on the other side. Again, I apologize for the bounciness of the video. Hoping to get a new camera here eventually. Kind of wanted to stick with you here until we get through and you can kind of see the area open up. On a deer trail right now. And this is actually a hunting trail, foot trail that I use when I spend time rifle hunting back here. The spot we're going to, we call the Pine Island. So it's a patch of white pine out in the middle of this bog. And it's just kind of a area that brings everything together as far as wildlife, numerous birds and everything out here too. But as you just look, you can see it'll open up a little bit, but it's got that, we've got that bog laurel, sedge mixed in, Labrador tea eventually, leather leaf is another one out here, wild cranberries. We've picked those out here before. Just a really interesting area. Just want to make sure in these videos that I not only focus on the large ecosystem, but also the smaller aspects, the little unnoticed, sort of subtle things that are true out here. One of them being the sphagnum moss, the rich diversity. We've got these little channels. I think they're probably animal trails, but they kind of furrow into the ground, and then the walls get these rich mixtures of different kinds of moss in there. And I'm definitely not a moss expert. I gotta do some learning on that, but that'll be for a later video. But this is the sort of thing that I want to bring to you. So in the north, we've got two main classes of spruce. We've got black spruce and then a series or a variety of white spruce species. This is the black spruce. This is one that is adapted again to growing in wet conditions. Its feet like to be wet, acidic, acid adapted. And the needles, the way you tell the black spruce from a white spruce as a group are the needle length. If you look at the needles, it's a little blurry. You can see they're really short compared to my finger. Whereas the white spruce needles are going to be about half again as long. Maybe 3/4 again as long as the black spruce. There's also numerous tamarack out here. Tamarack is the only deciduous evergreen that we have. In the winter, they leave behind these little bundles, these bud bundles or these needle bundles. These will erupt in the spring and put forth a cluster of fine, real fine needles, but numerous ones, anywhere from, I don't know, 15 to 25, maybe more needles coming from each of those clusters. In the fall, those needles turn bright yellow, gold, and they rain down in early October is when that event happened. Alright, so here you can see how it's opened up a little bit. The main natural area is more to the west of here, but this is all part of the same complex. Up ahead you can see the white pines that I'm heading toward. So as I'm approaching the pines, I've again come across the wolf tracks traveling down this particular trail that I'm on. So it extends. Seems to be there's at least 3 wolves on a couple other tracks split off to my right as I'm walking, headed out across the bog, coming from this island. The last time I spent any considerable time out here was probably 4 years ago, and my son actually saw a wolf when he was out here in November, kind of sneaking along the edge of the pines here, so I'm going to try to be a little quiet. If we get lucky, maybe we'll catch one of these animals trotting down the trail, moving through. It is a really quiet day because it's damp, drizzling a little bit. I don't know if the mic is picking that up, but you can hear dogs off on a distant farm barking. As I look back, those woods there you see, that's the end of the wart that we just came from. Alright, so I'm standing right next to the tree, the white pine, that my son was in when he saw those wolves, or a wolf, a few years ago. And the trail that I followed up along the edge has the wolf tracks right on it, and they came right past this tree. So this is a spot, this patch of white pine. I'm not going to go into it today because it's really wet. Everything's hanging with water, so I would get soaked. I'm wet already, but it's enough of a diverse area of habitat. Things just relate to it. And you get rich songbirds out here in the summer. Winter, you've got your standard community of chickadees and nuthatches, although nothing's much going today with the overcast, damp conditions. I'm going to keep pushing west. I should say I'm going to keep pushing east and kind of head out to the other side. Get back into the hardwoods, walk through some of the area of cutting and see if I can maybe find a shed antler from the deer that come in there and feed on the cut down tops. So as I'm traveling here, I just wanted to put in a word for birds. That's something I'm always keeping an eye out for, or ear out for. And I just heard some blue jays back there, which is not, definitely not out of the question in habitat like this. So have become aware of a site called eBird, and it's put out, sponsored by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology out of Cornell University out in New York. And I'm part of the challenge. They've put a challenge up for people to submit bird checklists once a day for all 365 days. So I've been doing that. I made every day during January here, and now I'm kind of compiling today's bird list for February 3rd, and blue jay will be on it. Saw a red-bellied woodpecker in town earlier today. Saw some crows on the way out here and some mourning doves. That's pretty much all I've been picking up this winter. Wanted to just take a minute to show you another thing that I found. A lot of people ask me, as part of my tracking, how I know the difference between a buck track and a doe track. And this particular track here that I just found, you can see my hand above it, is definitely a buck track. So the way you can tell a buck track a couple ways, first of all, by the width of the track side to side. If it's close to 3 inches, probably a buck. On a heavy animal like this one is, you can tell he's walking more on his heels because you have a real clear set of dew claws. And they say if the dew claws are as wide or wider than the track, it's a mature animal. You can also tell a mature buck by the roundness of the hoof at the tip. The rounder it is, the older of an animal it is. And then there's some other ways to tell based on the way the track appears. I've just kind of destroyed any sort of track, the direction this deer was heading. He was heading toward that island. That big pine you see, sort of, where is it here in the view? Kind of that one right, not my finger, but that tree right there is the one that we've used for deer hunting. So you can tell that these deer are orienting towards this island for habitat. But if you're able to see the rest of his tracks, you can kind of tell by the stance, which is the stagger, I should say, which is the width side to side. So the farther apart the tracks are as the deer walks, the older, more mature of an animal it is. And you can also tell by the length of the stride between each track, or between a set of right hooves and left hooves. So this guy was coming out of the hardwoods, which is where I'm heading. I'll just kind of go a little bit here. Here's another one of his tracks, kind of heading in this direction. So you can see one there. Big wide track. Could easily fit a 3-inch rifle cartridge. And there's another one. Probably missed one in there, but just by looking at the distance between this track and that next one, way up in there, there's probably one in between. You can tell he's really striding as he's walking. So anyway, at least one nice animal made it through. You can see there's numerous other doe tracks on this trail. So the deer are definitely using this spot as a route between the mature hardwoods and that island. I'm just kind of following the track right now. As you make your way through habitat like this, it's usually the easiest route to take is the route that the animals take. So I'm just going to kind of stick with this since it's going in the direction that I want it to. Lots of tracks on this, and it's interesting too, as I'm walking, to note that while I was finding wolves right in this immediate area, there's also numerous deer. A lot of times you hear people complaining about wolves as animals that kind of chase the deer out, and no doubt in some localized situations the deer population is dispersed due to the presence of the wolves, but they always find a way to coexist. You're never not going to have deer in an area where wolves are. And this is sort of proof positive. Just love it out here. So peaceful and quiet. Right there's a snag tree. It looks like the woodpeckers have been using for food. You will get the local woodpecker population, the hairy and the downy woodpeckers, burrowing nightly holes to overnight in to survive some of these cold conditions that we've been having. Kind of keeping my eye out for some of that too. This looks like somewhat of a major trail through here. This could be a hunter walking trail, although what I'm guessing it might be possibly is a fire line, an old fire line that was plowed back some previous time when there was a forest fire out here. Just by how clear and straight and open it is remaining. So, winter is definitely the best time of year to explore this particular spot anyway, because everything's frozen. If this were fall or summer or spring, we would be probably almost knee deep in water right now. But as it is, we're able to walk very easily across. We're not so warm today, we'd be high and dry too. But as it is, pretty much soaked. My feet aren't. I would say one suggestion that I would make if you're interested in exploring is invest in good footwear. I am partial to Keen boots. Really any good hiking boot that has Gore-Tex liners is going to be well worth the investment. My feet are not wet. guessing my pant legs definitely above my gaiters, but probably below my gaiters are too. If you're wondering what gaiters are, I'll show you these. In the north, in the woods, winter, definitely worth an investment in gaiters. It's just kind of a canvas plastic sleeve that you velcro onto your leg, hooks to your shoelaces, and cinch it up top and bottom. And whether you're on snowshoes or just hiking, it keeps the snow out off your leg. Kind of keeps your knee down, keeps you dry in the snow. Again, today is not a real good test of that because everything's soaking wet. But we are coming to the edge of this wetland. You can kind of see I'm on a fringe right now. A variety of sedges, cattails, alder to my left, next tamaracks. Definitely going to do some studying up this summer. My goal, I always set a goal for myself in the summer. This summer I would like to become more proficient at sedge identification. Been working on butterflies the last couple summers, trying to learn some of those. Got interested in dragonflies last summer, so I'll be doing some more of that. Just gorgeous out here. You can hear some blue jays in the background. Alright, you can see we've come up out of the swamp. We're back in those hardwoods. Still have the deer tracks along the edge. These are the ones that we were kind of following, backtracking, so they come out of here into the bottomland. Just a little bit on the Mead Wildlife Area. I don't know all of the backstory on it, but I do know that it was owned historically by the Mead family, who are the big owners of, one of the main owners of Consolidated Papers in the area, who was a company logging, or not a logging, but a paper mills in Wisconsin Rapids that owned quite a bit of land in Wisconsin. As paper as an industry began to decline and the Meads got to retirement, started selling off their lands to other timber companies. But this particular piece out here, not sure on the year, it's probably back in like the 50s, 60s. I'm not sure, I'll have to check my details. They either donated the land or sold it to the state, probably sold it to the state, which was then designated as a wildlife area. So it's unique. It's a big chunk of public land in the middle of central Wisconsin agriculture. And it's managed again for wildlife, but they also do a bit of logging. These are all logging roads that are scattered throughout the property. Again, like I mentioned earlier, a mixture of rich upland, big oaks, basswood, transition down into lowland, and logging. So I'm coming up to the area here where I wanted to do some checking for antler sheds. The whitetails drop their antlers each year. And this is a great spot if you're ever wondering where to go look. If you can find logging in an area in the north that has snow, deer often come in and feed on the buds, on the tops. Judging by the number of tracks right here, you can see they've been doing that. Although the deer this winter have had it pretty easy in Wisconsin anyway, because of the lack of snow. It's going to be an easy winter for them. But I can see there's lots of tracks here, so I'm just going to head off in one of these directions. Probably make a big loop through here. Just kind of wander in and among the tops, look for areas, concentrations of tracks, and if I find something, I will definitely show it to you, because it's a great spot to look for antlers. We're still a little bit early for antlers, but let me give it a try. So I've kind of made my way along the edge here. I found a couple spots where the deer have been pawing through the ground in an effort to try to get it fresh green. Been just kind of wandering and following the deer tracks. several very large tracks coming through here, so there's a mix of young and old ewes in this area. I hear somebody off in the distance. Sounds like shooting a 22. Maybe run into him before too long. I'm just going to keep going here. Coming up is that open spot that I was telling you about earlier. All that fog is, that used to be just basically trees this size here, all through there. Here's another sign if you ever find deer tracks out and about. A deer that drags its feet like that, typically thought to be a buck. Here you can get a good idea on that stance idea, that stagger I was talking about earlier. So it'd be the distance from that outside of that track to the outside of the next track. The wider that is, the older the animal. But whenever you see one looking like he's cross-country skiing like this one is, typically a good sign that it's a buck track. And again, you know, that's a very big track with the warmer conditions today. It is true that as the tracks melt, they get larger. They appear larger than they were, but it's a big track. Pretty much only seen deer tracks in here, no wolves, but definitely spot the deer coming to eat. Give you an idea here what they're eating. So this is a maple top, red maple, and I don't know how good this focus is going to work. If I get up real close, doesn't really look like it'll focus. But as I back out, you can see the tip of that branch has had that terminal bud nipped off. A lot of times when deer eat, they will bite the bud off and leave that little tag of bark behind. You can see some other tips here that have been nipped. So I just came onto this. Looks like a buck has made a scrape here. In the fall, the bucks will do a variety of behaviors, including rubbing trees with their antlers, which scrapes the bark off. They also paw the ground, make scrapes. They use this primarily as a way to determine dominance within the male members of the population. It was once thought that does used the scrapes as a way to find bucks, or bucks to find does. And no doubt there are does nearby, but typically a buck will paw the ground like this, and he'll also leave scent behind an overhanging branch. This branch is actually broken by the buck that made this scrape. They'll rub their antlers in it and leave scent from preorbital glands and the base of their antlers, and then they'll urinate into the scrape if it's a breeding scrape. And that's going to be a sign that that buck is in the area and he's the dominant one, and any other bucks that come by will know their place in the hierarchy. So you can tell by the way the soil has been sprayed off toward me here that there's definitely some pawing going on. Now it's a little late for bucks to be making scrapes, but no doubt there are some doe fawns. We're a little bit late in February, beginning of February here, but doe fawns that come into estrus in their first fall will usually do so a little later. So there could still be some smells of does in heat in the woods. Now as you look at this area I'm walking through, just a word on logging. I was kind of disappointed when I first came back to this spot after the November deer season to find it cut. And it is shocking when you first see it. And part of me still feels like I wish they would have left it, but you know, they did harvest the timber, which is the resource, renewable. And in a couple years, after a couple growing seasons, these woods are going to be considerably thicker along the ground than they are now. And that will make for better habitat, not only for the deer, but for birds, for small mammals, for a variety of animals. So in the end, it's a good thing, and trees are sustainable. Just the short term sometimes gets me a little bit, because I really enjoyed coming out here, you know, to this forest of these really big trees, as many of which they left, but a lot of which they took. It's just a large forest like this. So to be honest, it wasn't the best deer habitat, but the deer did move through, along with fox and bobcat and lots of amphibians and so on. But it's going to recover, and it won't ever look the same probably in my lifetime that it did, the way I enjoyed it, but it will come back. Just a couple thoughts on logging. Here you can see a spot along this edge that was logged several years ago. The trees are considerably smaller. That was clear cut. This spot is going to fill in, not quite like that, but it'll just create a rich, diverse mosaic of habitat. So I left the cut kind of coming down to the edge of the mature, or the young woods that I showed you on the edge of the cut before. I'm kind of in those woods now, just kind of following deer tracks. Coming to a spot that's just so characteristic of the Mead. And that, and I want to say that a lot of these areas out here like this, you know, being historical agriculture, farmland, are just remnants of the farming that happened. But it's not uncommon to get these patches of open edges in the midst of the woods. You can see here there's a mix of tag alder, sedge down in that direction. We're coming up to another ditch. A lot of things they did back in the day when this area was being agriculture going on is they tried to drain it. Very large wetland complex, and they dug drainage ditches all throughout here. So there's these series of straight directional ditches full of water, current, all leading toward a river in the area, local river called the Eau Plaine River. But you know, they're always full of water, so it provides a network of water. It also breaks the habitat up. But you get these patches of open and then more woods, which just makes it just really fun to explore. Kind of getting down into here, a thick spot. I'm heading to a place where we'll be hitting one of those ditches shortly. And then on the other side of the ditch is another large green conifer swamp. That's another great, one of my favorite areas out here. Along this trail that I'm walking toward the drainage ditch, just encountered this little spot of blood. You see this fairly regularly out here. Can't say exactly what this is. I see some tracks right here. Not real sure. Looks like an animal has been here. It's quite possible. Could be a squirrel. Squirrel tracks. So somewhat. Looks like the animal came and was eating, doing some eating here. And you know, whether it's a squirrel or it could be a snowshoe hare, there's lots of those in the area as well. In this, especially this sort of low, aldery type thick brush habitat. You'll get the females that come into heat. This is about the time of year that the snowshoes are going to be starting to breed, squirrels as well. And as they come into heat and are not bred, they leave a spot of blood on the snow when they urinate. And that's, I think, what you run into a lot of times out here in the woods. So I'm going to continue. I'm just kind of heading roughly south, kind of picking the driest route, heading toward that ditch. It's not uncommon down here in these areas to hear great horned owls. Did see one the other day out here that flushed as I was walking. And then beyond that, it's just a matter of getting lucky, being in the right place at the right time, catching the animal moving through, unaware of your presence. Alright, I'm coming up to the ditch I was talking about. You can often tell when the ditches you're approaching one. You see that bank that extends. That's a surefire sign. Now, these networks of ditches or channels out here in the winter look to be very safe to walk on, and many of them are, but I have been notorious for finding the ones that are not real solid ice, because they all do have somewhat of current in them. And I can't tell you over the years how many of these I have fallen through. So I'm going to go very gingerly. But here you can see, coming to a corner here, this one, particular one's heading west as you're looking, and then it turns left, heads south again along this edge of this forest. The other side, this is that evergreen swamp I was talking about. And you can see how they extend. This one goes about as far as you can see and then turns left, which is north, and then it heads up north probably better part of a mile before it turns back west and joins up with a main ditch. So they're just kind of snaking through here. Takes a while to learn them. Once you do, you can kind of use them to your advantage, or use them as pseudo trails. Kind of keep your way, make sure you're not gonna lose your way. You can see this particular forest here has not been logged, just a little more mature, open, not real big trees. Scattered pine, a couple jack pine every now and then, a white pine, but by and large deciduous. Alright, so I just came upon another predator track. I'll show this one to you. To me, it appears the animal is heading in this direction. And it looks real hard, not real easy to get a clear view of the track, but to me it looks like it's heading up in that direction, and it's either fox or coyote, of which there are both out here. Red fox, gray fox. And then coyotes, fairly common. You hear them periodically. With the wolves, not as much. Not as many of those. But they're back and forth through here, so I'm just kind of making my way back toward that logging, and I'm gonna head back to the Jeep. It's Super Bowl Sunday, so we've got about an hour and a half until kickoff. It's about 3:30 in the afternoon, 3:45. So I'll start making my way back to the rig. If I find anything interesting, I'll definitely come back and let you know. But I hope you enjoyed this. And again, I'm going to be trying to put more of these together. I kind of like the idea. I don't know if people will like them or not. Today we didn't see anything earth-shattering, but I would say the feature for today, go in my journal, is just the sort of the fogginess of the day. You don't often get these in February. So that kind of makes it unique, and the melting conditions gives good tracking for the heavier animals anyway. So, I'm going to sign off, and if you like this video, hit the like button. As I do these some more, I'm going to be introducing some of the other ways to think as a naturalist, including doing some drawing, some on-site nature, some studies in my sketchbook. Kind of give you the lowdown on some of those ideas that I have, ways that studying nature more in depth like that can deepen your appreciation of what you have, and help you record some of the things you see and some of the learning that you can have take place as you are out, and then as you are continuing to look back on your journals and just appreciate the experiences you have. As a naturalist, you're constantly trying to do is learn about everything that is around you. That you see a lot of times, you know the things because you run into them all the time, but there's also a certain percentage of the population that you see, but you're not quite sure on. So this is one particular one that I am not sure. I think I know what this is. I think it's called blue beech, or hop hornbeam. Sort of see it's a shrub. Gets a little bit tree-like. Got a couple of them here, so I think what I'm going to do, since there's a few of them, and these leaves that are sticking on the trees are kind of a characteristic of this species, called senescent leaves. Leaves that don't necessarily form the abscission layer in the fall. As the liquids begin to, as the photosynthesis actually begins to break down, the tip of the petiole that holds the leaf on, due to the action of a hormone, ethylene, begins to seal off. The xylem vessels in there seal off and cause that connection, that petiole point connection, to become weaker until the leaf falls off. But for some reason, some trees don't do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a branch off here, go home and try to identify these leaves and see what they are, and learn a little bit more about this species that I see all the time, but not quite sure what it is. Alright, so just had another good opportunity on this road. People often wonder, size difference, how do you tell the tracks apart? Wolves versus coyotes. Well, here you can see a wolf track kind of crossing this road, heading into the cut. And then coming down the road this way is the smaller coyote track. Best I can tell, I think it's coyote. It's kind of snowed in, older. That one right there, though, you can kind of see the toe marks and such. Heading down the road this way. So, to say those animals use the same area, definitely proof positive right here. And then you have deer tracks moving through as well. So everything finds its way, everything's got its place, the natural order of things. And it's fun to just get out and see it and try to figure it out, what's happening